Good morning. I'm Suzanne Zilber. I have been developing a workshop for the past 13 years to engage Unitarian Universalists in a free and responsible search for moral direction around social class and economic inequality. The workshop is designed to help you create a more inclusive faith, encourage action, and build community between participants through sharing stories. It was a true joy to explore class issues with your congregation, and some participants have collaborated to create this service, and some participants are in the audience. Thank you. Several today will share readings from the workshop along with their stories. Class is often defined as where one falls on a ladder of wealth, education, status, and power. We live in a hierarchy of who is valuable and who is disposable. Class is not just about money, it's also about culture. Culture being the rules for survival for a group's financial situation. And for some, survival does not mean meeting basic needs, such as food and shelter. It means maintaining an upper-class status. Classism happens when class prejudice and power cause harm. Classism can happen in relationships, in organizational structures and policies, and even within oneself. Perhaps you have experienced the stress of family pressure when you are not conforming to your class expectations, or have taken in negative messages about your class, like my friend who felt tainted by the label white trash. Finally, classism both creates and maintains extreme economic inequality in the US. Classism intersects with most forms of oppression. Historical and current racism and our slavery-based capitalism persist as causes of continued inequality in the US. Now, class issues can bring up emotions. Please notice them without judgment. After the service, you can talk about your reactions or feelings with myself and other participants in the chapel during the sermon chat at noon. My class search started as a preschooler. My life started in Shaker Heights in the early 1960s in a family of 4 children. My mother did not engage in paid employment outside the home, and my father took the public rapid transit downtown for work. My mother hired Black women to assist with childcare and housework. When I was 4 years old, one of our domestic workers brought her same-age daughter, and she and I played on my swing set. I was confused and concerned by the question, who is with her daughter while she's with me? The book Dreamtown, Shaker Heights and the Quest for Racial Equity described how the rapid transit was intentionally designed to send white men downtown and Black women to the suburbs to work. I had observed that as a teenager, and I would walk from my rapid stop to my very large home in shame over my unearned privilege, trying to work out a solution all by myself. Having been raised in upper middle class culture, my teen response to addressing this unfairness was to focus on my own individual achievement, that I would work hard as a student to gain the skills to help those who had less financial resources than me. I now know that the goal is to work collaboratively toward beloved community, not save people. So I had made a promise to myself to do something about inequality, but I was not sure how to go about it. Our faith calls us to be in community when we struggle with very difficult questions. Class and inequality raise difficult questions for me as an economically privileged person, such as, how much do I deserve? How have I harmed others through my privileges? How do I repair or take responsibility for that harm? Meanwhile, my psychotherapy clients in poverty situations struggled with how to maintain a sense of worth, dignity, and safety in a culture that makes their lives hard. I fortunately found communities to explore these questions, including in the workshops I have led. The 12 West Shore participants boldly created an authentic and courageous community to explore class issues. Well, I have been serious today. We do have fun together in the workshop. And you may participate in the workshop starting February 25th, and there's a flyer in your order of service. So now please welcome Pat Moore as our first storyteller.
I learned that you are passionate about improving the lives of people who suffer social injustice. This quote from Valerie Cower's "See No Stranger" strikes a chord in me and hopefully all of us. Seeing no stranger begins in wonder. It is to look upon the face of anyone and choose to say, "You are a part of me I do not yet know." Wonder is the wellspring for love. It is easy to wonder about the internal life of the people closest to us. It is harder to wonder about people who seem like strangers or outsiders. But when we choose to wonder about people we don't know, when we imagine their lives and listen for their stories, we begin to expand the circle of who we see as part of us. I grew up on a wheat farm in central Kansas. My dad kept one hired hand year-round and hired extra help at harvest time. Our hired hands received low wages and were in the working poor class. We had one hired hand with a drinking problem. My father kept him on because he was an excellent worker when he was sober. He, his wife, and 4 children lived in the country about a mile away from their nearest neighbor. This family struggled with alcoholism and low income. I recall my mother taking clothing and groceries to the family. One summer day, when we were gone on vacation, this man decided to go hunting. He went into our unlocked home and took my dad's hunting gun. He was drunk. He went home and accidentally shot his wife as he was showing her that the gun was not loaded. His children witnessed this tragedy. Now, I wonder about his wife and her life. I saw her, but I did not know her. Did she have friends and family? Did she have the option to leave her situation and have support she needed to take care of her children? Did she even know what social support options were available to her? I have many questions and no answers. Even though I did not know her, she touched my life. There are many people in our country and in our city that are in difficult circumstances due to class, income, sex, race, religion, disability, and other issues. We can live our lives without much concern because they may not affect our day-to-day lives. However, as I hope all of us strive for inclusiveness and expand the circle of who we see as part of us.
So, one of the things I've discovered over studying the classism was that a spiritual practice I needed to do was to grow my compassion. And so I hunted for something that would reinforce that with all of us. This is a Litany of Compassion by Dennis McCarthy. I will read the leader portion if you will do the responses. In the spirit of love, harmony, and remembrance, we stand too often divided, too often set apart from one another in heedless ways. We seek to be compassionate, but our vision may be clouded or distracted. We too often go forward day by day and look without seeing. May we work to heal the divisions which separate Earth's children one from another. May we peer through the mist of deception which hide and deny violence, miss enclosing those who suffer. May we not allow the misuse of our fellow souls to hide in broad daylight. When we see the afflicted, however they may be afflicted, may we not shrink away. May we not blame suffering on the one who suffers. May we be courageous enough to perceive suffering and compassionate enough to attend to the voices of those who suffer. When we see prejudice, when we hear evil speaking, when we witness the rough hand or the scathing word laid upon the helpless or the innocent, may we resolve to work towards unity and justice. May we not turn away from the wounded head of the abused. May we not accept the twisted reasoning by which the oppressor declares himself the victim. Let our gratitude for good fortune in our lives lead us not to complacency, but to awareness. Awareness of those whose lives are shadowed by abuse or neglect. May we not ignore signs of deceit or denial that hide brutality. In all things, may those who suffer ever be able to approach us. Find a kindly ear and a supporting hand. May we witness for love and justice at every level of relationship. May we nurture a keen eye and a strong and loving heart for any who fear the hurtful rod, the cutting voice, the uneven hand, the chain of oppression, be it great or small.
Many of us felt that this quote from Barbara Ehrenreich shifted our perspective. When someone works for less pay than she can live on, when, for example, she goes hungry so that you can eat more cheaply and conveniently, then she has made a great sacrifice for you. She has made you a gift of her abilities, her health, and her life. The working poor are, in fact, the major philanthropists of our society. To be a member of the working poor is to be an anonymous donor, a nameless benefactor to everyone else.
Our offering today goes for the general fund of our church. This fund makes me proud of the work we do at West Shore. It is more than keeping the lights on. The vast amount of programs here at West Shore are offered are perfect examples of what happens when our members share their time, their treasure, and their talents. Over the years, I and many others out there have been afforded the opportunities to nurture our mind, our body, and spirit that honestly, we might not be able to afford in other settings. This class, as well as the photo class that a bunch of us just took, are great examples of how we are able to take our learning and then bring it back and share it into our community. These are some of the full circle moments that, for me, feed my spiritual self and that of many of you. Let us now take our offering. The offering will now be given and gratefully received.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now, it is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now, it is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
Good morning. So I'm going to start with a reading by Rabbi David Wolpe. This was published in the LA Times, September of 2013. Quote, "We all know deep down that most of what we have is a product of good fortune. No matter how hard we work, we did not earn our functioning brains of the families into which we were born. We live in cities others created for us, organized by a government, protected by a military, shaped by our predecessors. Yet we still point to our accomplishments and proudly proclaim, "I did this." The well-off salve their consciences by assuring themselves that it is hard work and merit that brought them success, which also leads them to conclude that it is a lack of merit that keeps others from succeeding. End quote. Since I've spent most of my career as a university professor, I'm especially interested in the role of education in economic equality. I've always bought into the saying that education is the key to success. However, I've learned from the class-aware workshop that one's educational level can lead to a moral judgment about a person's value. This can lead to a type of classism where blue-collar workers who work hard to provide society with needed services are held in less esteem than white-collar workers. All labor has value. As noted by Thomas Frank in his book, What's the Matter with Kansas, quote, "To the liberal class, every big economic problem is really an education problem, a failure by life's losers to get the right certificate or the appropriate degree or whatever training one needs for the future economy," end quote. To illustrate how circumstances and the help of others contribute to economic success, I'd like to share a little about my story. I grew up in South Carolina in an institution for children from broken homes called Thornwell Home for Children. Thornwell operated somewhat like a boarding school, but at a certain age, all children were assigned jobs on campus to help the institution run efficiently. Thornwell provided me with a good education and opportunities for athletic success. Thornwell also encouraged and facilitated my obtaining a college degree by filling out financial aid forms, providing me with clothes, books, a small allowance, helping me obtain a work-study gig on campus, as well as giving me a job during summers. I subsequently received graduate assistantships for both my master's and PhD degrees. These opportunities, which likely would not have been provided by my parents, allowed me to achieve academic and economic success as a university professor. The point is that while I worked hard, I had opportunities not afforded to many, which made me who I am today.
So Reverend Dr. Andy Burnett wrote his dissertation on class issues in UU history and working class UUs. Please imagine a 6'4" man with light red hair to chin length and a beard and a mustache as I read this. I'll try to lower my voice. When I was young, my family was on government assistance. Dad worked in a factory that was suddenly shuttered by a fire. We lost our house, had to move to another state, and live in a trailer with another family so he could try to find work. We would shop for groceries late at night in mortal fear that someone we knew would catch us using food stamps. I felt a similar sting of shame when, early in my marriage and with a young baby, my wife and I needed government assistance. We received the message in ways big and small that in this country, we work hard for our money, and if you don't have enough money, maybe you aren't working hard enough. So there we were, wandering the aisles of the grocery store in the wee hours of the night, feeling badly about being in a situation which we had no hand in creating. We hadn't done something bad. It felt like we were somehow bad. Shame. But there is shame on all sides of this conversation. Reverend Anthony talked a few weeks ago about what author Brene Brown called privilege shame. Here's a small portion of what Reverend Anthony said. People with privileged identities learn what life is like for those whose corresponding identities are oppressed, and they feel terrible about it. White people feel terrible about the terrors and tribulations Black people face. Middle-class folks or able folks feel horrified that blue-collar folks and disabled folks were suffering in their midst and didn't know it. Big picture, all the ways that being white or middle class or abled or straight or cisgender or tall or handsome that enable a person to avoid trouble are unearned, are undeserved. And sometimes we need help figuring out how to turn that privilege into love and justice. Shame keeps us from coming together in curiosity and creativity. Yet we need interactions across social classes in congregations like this one, and in lots of other places too, if we hope to increase social class inclusion. And of course, these conversations are fraught. We will step on each other's toes now and then, and we'll have to say, "I'm sorry," and get back to it. Check out the list of resources in your order of service today to further your knowledge and skills as you think about having these conversations. And this workshop, which is about to be offered here again, is a place in which cross-class conversations occur with grace, without shame. We have so much to offer one another because of our diversity, social class diversity certainly included. It is exciting to unburden from our shame and fear and find the joy in relating to someone whose story is not like your own. May you discover this blessing again and again as you free yourself from class-based shame.
We hunger to give and thirst to
This class expanded on the last 2 years all church reads on race and caste. The class added another oppression, class itself. That is, oppression by wealth and power. I learned that these two oppressions, race and class, intersect and reinforce each other. To combat them, they must be integrated and their impact understood. I thank again the members of the class for a very frank exchange of ideas and experiences. I came to understand that we must use the idea and tool of intersectionality to combat all impressions. Ultimately, we must destroy patriarchy, which I now understand as the main reason for all oppressions. I define patriarchy as might makes right. The UUA, or Unitarian Universalist Association, committed to combat white supremacy and other oppression directly related to patriarchy. I'm personally committed to the continued study and research of human prehistory of the period prior to the introduction of patriarchy. This took nearly 2,500 years, starting in 3100 BCE and continuing to 600 BCE. My interest in this topic started many years ago by taking another church class called Cakes for the Queen of Heaven. Thank you.
I've long had an interest in class and classism since I first noticed people using low income as an argument against affirmative action. As in, we're not saying more Black people shouldn't be admitted to college. We're just saying it would be fairer if we used ability to pay instead of skin color as the metric. This is clearly on its face a way to increase racial disparities, and I couldn't understand why I was the only one who noticed. I continued to see more of the same. Perhaps some of the disconnect was that I was the only person of color in many of these situations, having been adopted as an infant into a white middle-class family. This adjusted my perspective just enough to see and question both sides. I've also met a lot of people who use educational attainment as the measure by which they decide who was worthy of a specific job, of respect, of a voice in the conversation. All excuses to discriminate, and as I further learned in this workshop, all used to ensure that the speaker and others in their affinity group are not forced down a rung on the class ladder, no matter where they started. So maintenance of these structures and systems is not accidental. They're very much upheld by those at the top, often with full awareness that their place at the top is in fact, if not merely accidental, then possibly unethical. I feel reassured to see intersectionality playing a stronger role in the national conversation about inequalities. Becoming class-aware improves our ability to be a part of the conversation and part of the progress because class itself embodies so much of intersectionality by including a wide variety of characteristics, both static and modifiable. During our workshop, I was surprised to learn how class divides show up in our own congregation and learned about things I can do to help alleviate them. I'm very excited to co-facilitate the upcoming class-aware workshop. I'm really looking forward to learning more and being part of building a stronger congregation here at West Shore.
Hi, I am Linda New. Last fall, during our conversations on classism, I came to see how profoundly I have been shaped by my own working class background. I grew up in one of Parma's mini ranches, surrounded by streets full of first-generation Eastern European Catholic families, all getting by and raising their children on one working wage. We spent summers in the woods behind our small development, outside most of the day, driven by the kind of curiosity that blossoms with long, unscheduled mornings and afternoons, in many ways an ideal childhood. However, growing up in this neighborhood, we learned a couple key things about our place in the world. First, we learned that our world was our neighborhood. We had no vacations at the beach. Eating out meant going to McDonald's, and museums were things that you heard about in school. Traveling outside the country was not dreamed of. My worldview and the worldview of many from my neighborhood limited how we saw ourselves and what we envisioned in our futures. Going away to college was not considered, much less going away to a prestigious college. Our neighborhood was not designed to produce corporate CEOs, Wall Street stockbrokers, or directors of philanthropic foundations. We had our community college, and we had our downtown university. And if you went to school at all after you graduated from high school, it would be a trade school or one of these two very fine institutions. This was accepted. And very few of us found a way to cross that boundary. The second thing that we all learned as low-income children of first-generation Slovenes, Serbs, and Croats was to keep your head down. Don't make waves, know your place, don't complain about the rules. Complaining led to conflict, which made you stand out, which was a problem. If you were censured, if someone in your family was harassed, you hunkered down and you tried to figure out what you did to bring this on yourself and what you would need to do to avoid being harassed again. This was accepted. These key experiences shaped my future, and my working class upbringing dictated who I was and determined what options I would have in life. Many, many years went by before I learned that I could stand up for people, that I could assert my values, that I could make waves and create change to make life better for myself and for others. As an educator, working with at-risk high school students, I have also seen the irreparable harm that's been done to so many who were born by chance into circumstances far worse than mine. Circumstances that put them at an overwhelming disadvantage in life. People who struggle with poverty, failing schools, limited opportunities, and discrimination due to factors entirely beyond their control. I work with students who don't know if they will have a bed to sleep in at night, and who are then labeled and penalized for being tired or unprepared at school the next day. Every day, I talk to students who suffer from asthma and immune disorders because they have grown up in a treeless, toxic island. The disparity is untenable. As we talked through this workshop, it became clear that it is within our power here at West Shore to spotlight these unjust systems of classism and social power ranking, and to bring about change right here where we live. We have the agency to recognize these inequities, to flesh them out, to work through them, to deal with disagreements that may arise, and to create change. We weren't all raised with the same rules. We won't all agree on what needs to be done, but we can't be afraid of conflict and differences. Talking through a bit of discord can be eye-opening. As UUs, we can embrace dissension, and we can come to a better understanding of what needs to change to create a better, more just world. Our closing reading is a poem by Reverend Tanya Yadira Marquez. Do not fear agitation, for agitation is the rhythm of life itself. to be put into motion, to be stirred. Do not fear the movements that decenter what you always thought permanent. You can, within the center of your understanding, you carry within the center of your understanding the compass to show you the way. Carry with you the love that will hold you, the vision that will guide you, the relationships to all beings and the world that will ground you. Go in peace and in gentle agitation to stir this world to the side of love.